in a possible State Department, Vice Presidential Department swap. Senator James Inhofe. Senator Inhofe, welcome back.
Oh, nice to be with you, Brian.
Well, I always love talking to you, but I loved your column a couple of days ago. And I don't love the theme of it, but the context of which I hadn't heard most of it. And that is, we should look out for cap and trade and the loss of jobs coming through the guise of a governmental department called the EPA. What do you mean?
Well, I was the chairman when Republicans were a majority of the Environment and Public Works Committee, and I saw what the EPA was trying to do then, but we could control it. Now, with the Obama administration in, they are just regulating us out of jobs in America. And the report that was in yesterday's New York Post that I wrote for them specifies just how many jobs and what it's costing us. Now, I have to say, Brian, this is the first of about 3 reports that we'll have, so this is just the tip of the iceberg. But one of those is what they're doing with industrial boilers and their emissions and the cost in putting some of those actually out of business. Every manufacturer in America has to deal with those. The second thing is the ozone. We weren't supposed to have this other next ozone round until it's supposed to be at the end of 5 years.
What do you mean by ozone round?
Well, they're changing the ozone standards to put counties, some 600 counties in America, would be out of attainment. Now, I've been out of attainment back when I was mayor of Tulsa. You can't recruit industry. You can't keep the industry you have. It's a real killer. And this new ozone decision, which I think has been made, even though they have not said it has, will put some 600 counties out of attainment. And you mentioned, and I don't want the time to run on us here without talking about what they're trying to do with the endangerment finding. The irony there, Brian, is that Lisa Jackson, who is the administrator of the EPA, that's Obama's administrator of the EPA, is the one that, since they were not able to do it legislatively, they are trying through the EPA to have cap and trade for all practical purposes. You remember the old McCain-Lieberman bill that would have had cap and trade and what it would have cost. Well, now they're trying to do it through an endangerment fight. I think we can win that battle, and I'd be glad to elaborate on that.
Well, the key is, Senator, to put a spotlight on this, then you'll win the battle. But if it's snuck through in terms we can't identify with, it won't. What you did in your column is say, look, we're going to have new rules for industrial boilers. Okay, that's boring. But what do you mean it could cost us 800,000 jobs? And ozone. The ozone levels you claim in many cases that they want us to live at are already in the natural air without industry standards.
That's true, and it was a little more elaborate in the article. The 800,000 jobs would be just the industrial boilers. That has nothing to do with endangerment, nothing to do with ozone and some of the rest. And those estimates come from the IHS Global Insight, which is very well respected. They did a study of this, and it's all on my internet or on my website if anyone's interested in getting into it. 800,000. And here's the great thing that's happening about this. The only good news is it's bringing the labor unions back to some reality to really be concerned about jobs instead of concerned about liberal agenda in the Democratic Party.
Now, with the ozone, you cite that there are 12 unions, including United Mine Workers, Teamsters, Sheet Metal Workers, that say that if these ozone rules go into play, they will have significant job losses across the country. So they're not in support of it.
No, they're actually in support of my position on this.
Exactly.
This happened once before, Brian, when we were a majority, and during the Clinton administration. This is some time ago, and they finally came around. And after all, labor unions are supposed to look after the workers, and we're losing jobs in America. And one of the major causes is the overregulation of the regulators. The main one being the Environmental Protection Agency.
So as we see this happening, we had a chance, you had a chance as lawmakers and we as a public, to vote on cap and trade. No one wants to pollute the environment or destroy the planet. But economically, we don't want to bring our country to its knees on some scientific theories that have been, in fact, not only not proven, but been disproven. But we're heading down that path.
Well, Brian, it was 8 years ago now that I came up with the hoax statement that the idea that catastrophic global global warming is coming as a result of man-made anthropogenic gases is the greatest hoax ever perpetrated on the American people. But it's an over-regulation thing, and I think that's what, keep in mind, this all started with the United Nations, and the science behind that has now been totally debunked. So that goes all the way back to the Kyoto Treaty. Remember that during the Clinton-Gore administration? And we didn't sign on to that, didn't ratify that treaty. And now, then after that, they kept coming up with the various bills, the Waxman-Markey bill, the McCain-Lieberman bill, and all of those that would have done essentially the same thing that the Kyoto Treaty would have done. But let's keep in mind that would have only affected the United States of America. In other words, there are some people out there listening to us right now who believe that we need to reduce greenhouse CO2. This would not reduce CO2 if we pass these regulations just in the United States. In fact, even Lisa Jackson, the administrator of the EPA, admitted that it could increase the CO2 emissions because our jobs would leave and go overseas to places like China, India, Mexico, where they don't have any meaningful emission standards.
Well, you also cite that if we do all these things, it would cut the global temperature by 1/100th of a degree.
Yeah, the interesting thing about this is that's a figure from the EPA. And it's kind of funny because back when Al Gore was trying to do this as the vice president, he had Tom Wigley, a well-known scientist, do a study as to if all developed nations were to sign on to the Kyoto Treaty and live by their standards, how much would it reduce the temperature? And it was the same figure that we're quoting in this. So that's a pretty consistent figure. It's not even detectable.
Senator Inhofe, this is alarming. You're bringing it forward. It's going to be a series of articles, columns that you're going to be bringing forward. We go to your website. How? Inhofe.senate.gov. Inhofe is spelled I-N-H-O-F-E. Inhofe.senate.gov. By the way, I'm very confident that Republicans are going to take over the Senate, and I'm anxious to be chairman of that Environment and Public Works Committee and get some sense into the EPA and try to save jobs in America. Right. I mean, what makes you so confident? For example, I mean, we know Republicans seem to be in contention in Illinois. They have hope, even though they're 10 points out in Connecticut. We know they've made tremendous progress over their very popular governor, Joe Manchin, in West Virginia. And are there other areas which would make you so hopeful? Oh, yeah. There are a lot of them. Pennsylvania, all, we know. We're going to hold all the seats that we have. Then, of course, we're going to have Arkansas. I think we're going to have California. We'll have You think you'll get Boxer's seat? Yep, sure do. And Florida is no question about Marco Rubio, but that holds a place. Illinois is now ahead. Dan Coates is another seat we pick up. Pat Toomey is a seat. We're up about 8 points there. I think that Sharon Angle is going to win, too, but that's not on the winning list necessary to take over. Dino Rossi versus Murray, we all know about that. We know that here's the John Racy in West Virginia. Whoever thought that would be in play? Now it looks like it's Delaware could still come through. So and then John Hoeven in North Dakota. Now, the ones I've listed are the ones that will definitely win, and with a couple of maybes in there. So I think my list is 14 long. We need 10 seats. I think we'll get them, and I think I'll be chairing that committee. And then you'll have a chance to stop some of these things, as you call, job-killing machines. Yeah, and I hope that you and I can talk during that time as we progress, because we'll need to get a lot of the public involved in this thing. You got it. Senator Inhofe, thanks so much for joining us. It's going to be an exciting 3 weeks as we head to the midterms. It is, Brian. Thank you. All right. Senator Inhofe telling us how cap-and-trade's coming through the back door to a country near you. Yeah, your country. When we come back, your turn to get on the phones.